Never warn anyone if they are about to be fired. It creates a dangerous situation in the workplace, especially for women, and I will never do it again. About 2 years ago I was inadvertently made aware that one of my coworkers was about to be fired that Friday. We will call him Carl. Apparently, Carl had made a habit of pissing off the wrong people and making misogynistic comments in front of his female supervisor. Surprisingly, that's not what actually got him fired. What finally did Carl in was the fact that he stupidly chatted up some powerful guy's wife at a company social event the week prior. Rule 1 for company social events. Never, ever, ever be too chatty with random women at these events. Stick to the people you know. You never know who she's married to and how powerful and insecure her husband may be. I only found out about Carl's pending firing because my job duties required me to spend a lot of time around upper management. My proximity to the halls and offices of upper management allowed me to overhear a conversation about his pending firing. And since none of the upper management personnel was aware that I knew Carl personally, they spoke freely about him right in front of me. They laughed for several minutes about everything involving Carl, from his mediocre work ethic, the chatting up somebody's wife incident, his wardrobe, and the inappropriate misogynistic comment he was accused of making in front of his female supervisor. I basically sat there, stone-faced and disinterested, to hide the fact that I knew Carl personally. It must have worked because they kept going on and on about how mediocre he was. When I was finally able to sneak away, I consulted one of my buddies for advice, told him that Carl was getting fired on Friday, and asked if we should warn Carl. This was on a Monday afternoon and we both agreed that despite Carl's many flaws, it would be the decent thing to do to warn him so he can start his job search a few days early. Huge mistake. Next day, Tuesday, arrives and we invite Carl out to lunch. After we're all done eating, we break the news to Carl. We tell him that we caught when that he's getting fired on Friday and there's nothing he can do to reverse it. We also advised him to start his job search immediately and to call out sick on Friday so that they are forced to fire him over the phone versus humiliating him by having him escorted out by security on Friday, which is standard procedure. We also made him promise to keep a low profile the rest of the week and not make it obvious that he was aware of his fate, with a promise that he only kept for the 20 minutes it took us to drive back to the office. Within minutes of arriving back at the office, he stormed into his female supervisor's office and accused her of hating men, sabotaging his career, and actively working to get him fired. We weren't present for this part of the story, but apparently, after storming her office so aggressively, she asked him to leave her office. When he refused, she literally screamed for help. That's when several people within earshot came running to see what was taking place. When they forcefully removed him from her office, he took off running to HR. But in the midst of all of this chaos, his supervisor panicked and pulled the fire alarm, assuming that he was running off to get a weapon to come back and harm her with. I was completely oblivious to all these events, so when I heard the fire alarm, I assumed it was a normal fire drill. Everyone on my floor casually exited the building via the stairwells, but when we made it outside, we were greeted by several police vehicles arriving and cops literally running full speed into the building. That's when we were all told to go home for the day. I was still completely oblivious that all this was for Carl. I actually found out later on social media that Carl triggered all of the chaos the next day. I also found out that when the cops were searching the building for him, they found him sitting outside of HR waiting for the fire drill to end so he could file a complaint against his supervisor. He had assumed it was a normal fire drill as well. He had no clue his supervisor had pulled the alarm on him because she was afraid of him becoming an active threat. He was fired on the spot, and didn't even make it to Friday. And this is why I would never tip anybody off ever again. Lesson officially learned.